Hi, this is Whitney Warner, and this is my action research project, Bad to Bold. We've all had those students who say things like, I'm just no good at reading, and we see how damaging that attitude is towards their progress in reading. Well, the purpose of my action research project was to identify the influence that teacher feedback can have on student growth in their ability and attitude towards reading. In my literature review, I found studies that said feedback would positively affect student growth, studies that said that feedback would not affect student growth, and also a study that talked about our natural use of praise in the classroom. These are the research questions that I will be discussing in this presentation. My research was done with participants in my 5th grade Spanish dual language class. I chose 10 students in my Spanish and English classes that had a low self-perception of their reading ability and were underperforming in reading. I compared their progress to a control group in another 5th grade Spanish English class at my school. These students in their guided reading instruction were given specific performance-based feedback throughout the course of this study. They were pre-assessed and post-assessed to see how that feedback affected their learning and attitude. My results were encouraging. You can see in the graph here, the purple group being my experimental group and the green being my control group, that the students in the experimental group saw more positive change in their attitude towards reading and also in their ability to comprehend Spanish and English texts. Also, we saw that of all of the students in the experimental group, the majority made gains in Spanish and English comprehension, and the majority made gains in their English fluency level, and actually all students were able to make gains in their Spanish fluency. To go back to my research questions, the first two asking, in what way does specific performance feedback influence academic growth? And the second one saying, what is the relationship between the type of feedback provided and the progress of students' academic performance in reading? I found through my data that it could be concluded that this type of feedback, positive performance-based feedback, would positively affect academic growth in reading of students who believe themselves to be poor readers. In this discussion, I also talked about how when consistent positive performance-based feedback is provided to the student, how would the self-perception of the student's reading ability be positively or negatively affected? And I found, again, that this consistent positive performance-based feedback not only positively affected them academically, but it also affected them positively as their self-perception as readers. In other words, my students who started this study saying things like, I'm just no good at reading, were able to improve their self-perception of their own reading ability. I think that this study has many implications for practice. I would encourage all teachers of all subject areas, not just reading, to incorporate consistent performance-based feedback into their classroom instruction. I believe it'll positively influence their academic performance in that academic area, but also be able to improve their attitude towards that subject area. I think that teachers and teacher teams should work together to brainstorm positive and constructive feedback to use with the students and to have that ready for their instructional time. And I believe that all school districts should provide more teacher training in the use of performance-based feedback in the classroom. Finally, I would like to see this study repeated. Due to the COVID pandemic, this entire study, all the instruction, feedback, and assessment was given virtually as we were in a remote instructional model. And I would love to see this study repeated when the students return to in-person learning. Also, if the study is repeated, I would like to see that the difference between the feedback given in the control group and the experimental group is better recorded, so that the control group is taking those anecdotal notes about what kind of feedback they're given, and then the researcher can draw more solid conclusions between the type of feedback and the effect that it has. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope this is helpful for your classroom.